Hi everybody, it's Alan Berecka reporting in from the ECU South Lounge in Sinton, Texas. Before I start, I'd like to thank Errol Hughes for reminding me to order more copies of my books because now if Alice and I run out of toilet paper, we have a backup plan. I want to start with a poem Ken Hada recently read on one of his podcasts, a poem called Good Friday. And thanks to Paul Bowers for suggesting the poem. Good Friday. I once saw my grandmother praying next to her half turned down and sagging double bed, in her bathrobe on her ancient knees, on a hardwood floor beneath a humble deity who bled oil-based paint from chiseled wounds. Eyes closed, she mumbled a mantra and thumbed her beads, fingering memories. She told me once, suffering is a given, hope remains 3 days away. Just want to read a few new poems that I've been working on, and thank you for your attention. Hope you enjoy them. First poem's called The Great Escape. You need to talk to him. He needs to find a job. My boozy mother's voice echoed throughout our cabin-sized house as she worked at the stove frying breaded pork chops. What the hell for? We ain't broke. My father, home from his shift at the sheet metal shop, covered in sweat and grime, sat in the kitchen, unlacing his red wing high tops. An unopened beer sat sweating a ring on the table. Why? It'll be good for him. He's not doing a damn thing this summer. Stella, I've worked like a dog my whole life, and it ain't taught me squat about nothing yet. Albert, it's time that boy does some growing up. Stella, he's only got 1 year of school left. Let him enjoy it. 3 months of flipping burgers can't buy him anything better than time. She let the argument drop while I sat on my bed with an open book in hand, smiling, grateful for the reprieve. Blue collar heaven. My father never got a paid day off. No sick days, no holidays, not even Christmas. So he worked on every eve and birthday, dragged himself to work with fevers and stitches, often over my mother's protest because the goddamn bills won't pay themselves. His Tin Knockers union had a healthy strike fund, so he never voted to ratify a single contract. No matter if Jesus Christ himself returned to Utica as a union boss and preached the value of ratification, my old man's mind would remain unchanged, even if he knew his thumbs down would place his back pew Catholic soul in peril, because nothing he could imagine came closer to paradise than sitting on a cheap lawn chair in his backyard on a weekday afternoon while nursing a cold brew and watching his grass grow, all the while knowing that a fat check from the union sat in his bank account, answering his most basic of prayers. It's a library poem for you guys. Honest work. The old director rarely ventured from her fifth-floor rookery, but one day she waddled and puffed, as a self-assured empress penguin might, up to the reference desk, where I sat, pencil in hand, working intently on the day's crossword. Miffed at what she saw and hoping to instill some shame, she squawked, "Working hard today, Alan?" Unfazed, I replied honestly, "Chris, if I wanted to work hard, I'd have been a coal miner." The surprised empress stifled a laugh as she fled back to her higher ground. Lucky at nothing. Speaking of nothing, that's a painting by Steve Schrader behind me, and the dish from Scissortail I was so grateful to receive 2 years ago. Or was it last year? Lost track of time. Lucky at nothing. I mean, I could look it up, find out who first said, if you love your job, you'll never work a day in your life. But I bet the ranch it wasn't a coal miner or a dishwasher who came up with the lame-ass phrase that I resent all the more each time I hear it parroted. My pastor, a good man and friend, claims to be one of those who loves his work. I told him not long ago that I planned to escape captivity and retire early. He stared at me like I was fixing to jump off a cliff and blurted, "Don't, you'll die." My friendly pastor turned prophet of my apocalypse stunned me into exclaiming, "What the hell? Why?" Because what will you do? I know so many who retire only to give up the ghost. I was so shaken by his concern, I held back my normal snarky retort, which would have been something like how a fear of death might be bad in his line of work, and instead said, "Oh, plenty." And then our conversation moved on to what we could agree upon, the need for the Yanks to find more pitching. With practice, I've gotten better at answering the question, what will you do? When people ask, as they always do, as if doing alone fuels a human, I simply answer, I'm going to live. I don't feel the need to explain my plan, no more than when I was a kid spending my summers walking in the woods or riding my sister's old bike with white handlebar grips, stained purple with wild elderberries. And I remain grateful that the great gift of doing nothing well has always come to me so easily. Our trespasses. Ken Hayes placed it squarely in the middle of nowhere. So he wonders how it is an older couple knew to climb his fence and find the tree and its dark orange fruit. He writes the question into a poem, one of my favorites, and he leaves the reader without an answer. Today I listened to Ken read the poem on his podcast, and the answer came as easily as the aroma of persimmon pie wafting through an autumn-aired kitchen. For the couple and the tree were old, and Ken was new to that piece of land. Memories of my autumn days of my youth spent with my father drift towards me as we hunted on lands of unknown farmers, hunted with wicker baskets and paring knives, hunted for the scent of death, the smell of moss and decaying pine that pointed out mushrooms, the kind our women folk washed and boiled to fold into stews and garnish T-bones with. We never gave a thought of ownership as we crossed barbed wire fence after barbed wire fence in the middle of nowhere, feeling no danger, except that time a Holstein bull appeared in a meadow and began to paw the ground and snort. We abandoned the mushrooms and sprinted towards the fence, laughing like idiots once we rolled to safety. We burnt the best foraging spots deep in our brains, spots unmapped, uncharted for years before a GPS could help us return to those mother lodes of mushrooms year after year. End with a couple brand new poems. First one's called COVID-Infected Thoughts. Irony in the time of plague pales. The toilet paper eating virus fails to amuse. And so we hide from one another, paint our door jambs with the blood of lambs mixed with 60% alcohol. Not sure if faith should be placed in God or science or both. This angel of death shall pass, and most of us will survive, to be extinguished in some forgettable manner. And so my old friend irony stands a chance to be revived, but I'm not sure I will hold him as dear. For my psyche and my age seems to be drifting towards an awareness of the sincere. And speaking of the sincere, this is probably the only time I'm ever going to read this poem. A warning. Be careful. You might go to Waco, to a conference to read some poems, and then decide to go to lunch with a stranger, a giant in a tweed jacket, larger than a Bedouin tent. And at that lunch over bad Chinese food, you might get invited to read at a fledgling festival in some place named Ada by that giant named Haida. Be careful, because if you say yes, you will unknowingly agree to join a tribe, or maybe a cult, that will bring you back year after year until, like an addict on crack, you will become dependent on your tribe members to remember why you write, why you enjoy life so much. Until a plague takes down the tent, keeps the tribe from gathering, and you will be left staring into a web camera, reading some lines about how much you miss the gathering of your clan, the people of the Scissortail, the people you wish with all your heart that each and every one of them will remain safe until the tent can go back up and we can embrace each other in our lives in the way they were meant. Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.